friends. We're recording this episode, so thank you all for joining us today. So this event is being hosted by SWAN, the Smart Water Networks Forum, and by RiSWP, the Rising Smart Water Professionals. SWAN is a global nonprofit and the leading hub for smart water and wastewater sectors. And RiSWP is SWAN's young professional affiliates open for rising professionals and students 35 and under who are interested in joining and advancing the smart water sector. For those of you who really want to get involved and carve yourself out as leaders in the smart water sector, RiSWP is now accepting applications for the RiSWP Ambassador Program. The Ambassador Program is open to all SWAN members 35 and under. The program aims to equip these smart water professionals from across the globe with knowledge and leadership skills, and through some skills and development and networking opportunities, mentoring and educational content. RiSWP ambassadors serve as an extension of the RiSWP leadership team and support with RiSWP engagement activities. We'd be delighted to receive applications from any of you. Know that we're receiving applications until January 28th, and we'll share the link with you guys in the chat as well. If you have any questions about the program, please feel free to reach out. Next, we wanted to invite you. SWAN and the Cleveland Water Alliance are hosting this great webinar on building trust in smart water. Trust is the glue that builds successful partnerships and holds smart water agreements together. But what are the best ways to ensure this trust? So we invite you to join us on January 25th. This is an open event and a free event, open for anyone to attend, and we'll make sure to share that link with you as well. And then lastly, we just wanted to remind you, we'd love for all of you to join us at our 13th annual conference in Glasgow, taking place May 9th to 11th. There's special pricing available for young professionals, and there's also going to be some great programming for young professionals as well. So stay tuned for more news about our Young Professionals Workshop, and we hope to see you guys in Glasgow. And I'm going to pass it over now to the man of the hour, to Billy, the host of our mentor series.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, so for anyone that is new to the mentorship series, we meet generally bi-monthly. So every 2 months, we have interviews with some of the world's leading smart water sector professionals. So we generally follow kind of a list of guiding questions kind of about mentorship. I really encourage audience Q&A participation. So both throughout, just keep throwing questions in the chat. We'll try to leave as much time for question and answer as possible at the end. But if you miss any of these mentorship series episodes, we do publish all the recordings on the RiSWP webpage. For people that aren't familiar with RiSWP, it's the Rising Smart Water Professionals group within SWAN. And today we're focused on how to land a job in smart water. So this was an episode that we had about a year or two ago. It's really popular. I think we have a lot of young professionals that are looking for a job, and so this is something that resonates with a lot of people. So what we have in store today is we have a panelist from across different sectors within smart water. We have Lisa, Aaron, and Amir. Unfortunately, Aaron won't be with us live. He had sort of a family emergency come up, but we'll make sure that we kind of touch on kind of a few things that he brings to the table. So in order to introduce our panel, we want to start first with Lisa. So Lisa works as a scientific researcher in the Innovation and Valorisation team at KWR. Lisa is also currently a PhD candidate at Copernicus Institute of Sustainable Development at Utrecht University. Her work is divided between research and practice of stakeholder engagement, knowledge transfer, science communication, and collaboration across European and international water and climate projects. So in this context, Lisa works focusing on building relationships and co-creating innovative solutions to deliver impact. And her passion lies in connecting people and ideas for a water-wise world. Next, we have Amir. So Amir Cahn is SWAN's executive director. Amir joined SWAN in 2013 and has been instrumental in growing the organization into the leading global hub for the smart water sector. So throughout his time, he has helped engage members, develop in-depth research reports, develop tools, and help launch and grow regional SWAN alliances in the Americas, Asia Pacific, and Europe. Before joining SWAN, he completed a dual master's degree in environmental science and public affairs from Indiana University. And in conjunction with SWAN, Amir is now pursuing a PhD focused on the impact of the data as a service model on water and wastewater management. Last, even though he's not here, I'm going to read Aaron's bio. Aaron McGarvey is a data scientist and founder of Tomea, the first data science consulting firm solely dedicated to the water industry. During his time at American Water and Storm Sensor, he worked with data from virtually every domain across the modern water utility. Aaron focuses on uncovering the underlying operational issues facing water utilities and connecting them to simple solutions. So, kind of as a summary for everyone trying to keep up, we have Lisa really focused on stakeholder engagement in climate solutions within the water sector. Amir has a background in policy, business entrepreneurship, and leadership at SWAN. And Aaron is focused on programming, data analysis, and applying that to civil engineering applications. So really an amazing panel. Thank you, Lisa and Amir, for being here.
Yeah,
So,
my pleasure.
Yeah, so to get started, I mean, I'm sure everyone's wondering, you seem to both be in really great places right now. In order to dive in this discussion about how to get a job, first I want to start with a question to the panel. What led you down that road? How did you end up in the smart water sector? And I guess maybe can we get started with Amir? How did you end up where you are?
Yeah, thanks, Billy. It's really a pleasure to be here. I've seen the Young Professional Mentorship series grow and risk grow. So kudos to everyone involved. And since Aaron's not here, I'm going to give the long answer. And first, I think the question is, how did I get involved in water? Because I didn't know anything about smart water. And for me, it really had to do with inspiring teachers and wild salmon. So I grew up in Seattle, the Pacific Northwest. And in high school, I had a great biology teacher named Miss Breton with a very heavy French accent. And she really built my passion for the environment. And one of my projects was to research salmon. And wild salmon are almost endangered. And if you don't know about salmon, they lead a really interesting life cycle. So they're born in freshwater, they migrate to the sea, and then they use their sense of smell to travel upstream to the same river or stream that they were born in. The mother lies her eggs, and when she dies, her eggs actually eat her bacteria to survive. And one of the things about salmon is, I don't know if people here have heard that expression, canary in a coal mine. So they used to put canary birds in a coal mine, and when those birds had trouble breathing, it meant that the conditions weren't good for humans. And so it's a metaphor that salmon are really a canary in a coal mine for humans, because when they travel upstream and they become endangered because of predators, climate change, logging, it's a sign that the water is not fit for humans as well. So instead of taking chemistry, I took advanced biology. And then when I went to college at Brandeis, I had another inspiring teacher named Professor Perlman, and I studied conservation biology, and I wrote a 50-page paper on the Puget Lowlands ecoregion, so really looking at the entire ecosystem. And I remember this teacher, every Friday he showed eco heroes. So he would show these, if you remember those old projectors, and all of these eco heroes were his former students. So it was really inspiring. And after graduating college, I moved to DC. I didn't have a job. I just knew I wanted to live in DC. And I ended up working for an energy law firm. And so I really didn't like that job so much. Actually, a side note, my boss, his name was Nancy Skanke. But I decided I want to go back into the water industry. So Indiana University had this program where you could do 2 masters at the same time in 2.5 years. So I focused on public policy, environmental science. And I also knew that after I graduated, I want to live in Israel. So I was born in Israel. I moved when I was 5. I had family here. I knew that Israel is doing a lot of innovative things in the water sector. And during 2012, when I graduated, it was a really tough time, like kind of now, to find a job. And so there was an opportunity to do an internship program in Israel. And so I did that, even though it was unpaid. And I was working for a technology company called Takadu. And the CEO of Takadu, also named Amir, was the first chairman of SWAN. So that's how I heard about smart water. It wasn't really my interest. Like, I didn't have an engineering background. It was more policy. But I saw the value of smart water and taking this kind of holistic approach. So there you go.
That's great. I love it. So first, getting inspired kind of by your natural surroundings, by the salmon, and then moving to a city that you knew had good opportunities, DC, realizing that you wanted to be in water, so specializing in graduate school, and then also knowing that you wanted to end up in Israel, that really is a leader in smart water. It seems like a really cool path. Lisa, how did that compare to kind of your path?
Actually, quite similarly, I would say. But yeah, but before I begin and dive into my kind of career path, thanks again for having me. It's really great to be here among new and old friends. So welcome everybody, and thanks for being here. Yeah, so my career was also a bit kind of inspired by my environment, but also kind of a bit of a passion for the environment, and also a bit of chance and random luck with Amir too, and a lot of zigzagging and non-linear behavior. So basically, when I was really young, like still in elementary school and high school, I was kind of dubbed the environmentalist or the eco-friendly girl or the tree hugger by all of my friends, which was like kind of funny at the time, but now I actually take offense to this because I feel like everyone should be like that. But I think, 10, 15 years ago, it was less so. And so when I was in high school, I would always organize activities like tree planting activities or recycling day or cleanups, because my school didn't have any of those activities actually in place at the time. And then when it came time to going to college, actually at the time, there were no real programs that were non-engineering programs, because I kind of knew that I wanted to do something more in the social sciences, but not so much in engineering or hard sciences or going down that path. And so there was nothing at the time in kind of the social sciences when I was going to college. But then funnily enough, what happened is that my mom works at a dentist's office, and 3 or 4 months before I had to finalize my decision for applying to college, somebody came in from this college in Montreal that was starting a new program at the college called Environmental Studies. And it was the first year they were going to have it. And so just by luck, I found out about this program and signed up. And that was kind of, the rest is his history in a way. And so we were the guinea pigs of this program. We were only 17 students in this environmental studies program, but it really taught me a lot. And I continued to kind of be a sort of activist or doing things at my work while I was working during college and things like that as well. And then after college, I wanted to continue down the social sciences sphere, but also didn't really know what I wanted to do in the environmental realm, because there's such a wide domain, let's say. So I went to McGill University and also in environmental studies with a minor in geography. So still very broad, learning lots about policy, economics, also some technical courses as well, because they're mandatory when you're learning about environmental policy and things like that. And then in my second year of my bachelor's, I went on a field study semester in Barbados. And that's where I think I had my first kind of introduction into the water sector and water management and wastewater treatment. And that was with a really lovely professor from South Africa, who was one of the most renowned civil engineering professors at McGill University. And I always remember him saying to me on my first time there, you really think like an engineer. Are you sure you don't want to be one? And I was like, no, I'm good. But I always thought that was a super nice compliment from him, because it really meant a lot. So anyways, all of that to say, I then didn't know what I wanted to do after my bachelor's. I didn't want to really continue with my studies. I kind of felt like I had had enough of uni and I wanted to get out there and work in the industry. And so then I tried applying for jobs in Canada in the social science sector of water and found absolutely nothing, because that doesn't exist or didn't exist in Canada. You either had to be an engineer, a hard scientist, or something to even get a kind of social science job. So I then pursued a master's and did my master's in integrated water resources management, because I thought, okay, let's get from environmental degree to something more specific, which is water. But then I shortly realized that water is also just as broad and as wide as the environmental sector. But I really, really enjoyed my master's degree in the water management, integrated water resources management, and met a lot of fantastic people. And again, had really great professors who kind of led me down that path. And then, yeah, after my master's, I just got odd jobs, like doing internships, trying to find something that would stick. I think I did 3 internships before I actually got my job, which was my first job, which was at the IWA, so International Water Association, which is based in the Netherlands. And then I worked there, and yeah, I worked there for 3 years, and that really opened my eyes to the entire breadth of possibilities in the water sector. And that's also where I kind of got my first intake into smart water and learning more about the digitalization, because I think while I was at IWA from about 2016 to 2020 or so, that's when like smart water really started like accelerating in the sector. So it was a really fun time to be there. But yeah, I was still not really, the technical person or really in smart water, but got to touch on it a little bit by doing stakeholder engagement, collaboration, and those kinds of activities. So yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Lisa. So I feel like for both of you, there was a motivation, an inherent desire to work in water, or to work to benefit the environment. And then it was kind of an iterative process of saying, how do I take this thing that I really care about and align it with hard skills, technical skills that match up with a job that I could see myself in? And I think that's probably what a lot of our audience is trying to navigate. I care about this thing, but how do I get a job? What skills do I use? So to kind of pivot into the next part, really want to kind of get everyone's advice on how to navigate the job market for smart water. And so, Lisa, I think I'm just going to stay on you for a second. So, briefly, what is it like to find a job in stakeholder engagement in climate projects? I think you kind of started to allude to the fact that, if you want an engineering job in water, that's a bit more straightforward, but a lot of people care about, the climate more broadly. If someone were looking for something similar to your path, where might they start?
Yeah, I think to give hope to anybody in social sciences right now, I think it's really grown over the last 6 or 7 years. Also, the kind of understanding that social scientists are kind of required in solving these complex problems that we're currently dealing with. But yeah, when I was graduating from uni, it was really challenging, because I think in North America, there's still that really like, you have to be technical to work in any of these fields mentality. And but then when I moved to Europe and got my first job at IWA, I really noticed like, wow, in Europe, it's way more advanced. They kind of understand the dynamism that is required in the climate sector and the water sector, all the different broad like expertises that you need to make sure that solutions are put forward or innovated or scaled up. And so I really felt that like, not only in climate change perspectives, where Canada and the US are kind of lagging behind. I mean, things are starting to pick up now, but 6 or 7 years ago, it was still in Canada, like some people still thought climate change was a hoax, for example, whereas in Europe, it was like 10 years ahead, and they were making like sponge cities, and Copenhagen had a cloudburst plan and all of these different things. So I felt that in Europe, I kind of found myself and found my people. So yeah, I think sometimes you just kind of have to look out of the box. And I think also for stakeholder engagement, for me, it was never something that I kind of knew that I wanted to do, but I think the like somehow like the universe did. And I just, for not getting too esoteric here, but I think I just kept finding jobs that I thought sounded cool and kept having really great mentors who happened to all be really fantastic women working in the water sector, who really kind of saw the skills that I had and really helped me pursue them and perfect them, which was so nice of them to do and to realize that. And then that's kind of where I realized, like, oh, I'm really good at these things and I really enjoy them, so I'm going to continue working in this field. And so I think in stakeholder engagement, to get a job in that field, but also in climate change, you kind of just have to find your way or find a gap potentially, at least for stakeholder engagement. And that's also kind of what I've done in like my current job at KWR. I think they were looking for someone like me, but they didn't really know how to say that they were looking for someone like me. And then just through networking and knowing people within the company, and ended up having kind of informal interviews, they made a position for me based on my skills and what I could bring. So what I would say that is that, yeah, a lot of companies right now, and a lot of technical companies or research companies or institutes or more of these like consultancies are starting to get on this. Okay, we need social scientists, we need people who have these type of skills, but there's also definitely opportunities for you to network and present your skills and show people maybe what they're lacking and say, hey, like, I see you're doing these massive projects on digital water. Maybe you could take them to the next level because I have these facilitation skills, or I have these transdisciplinary skills, or I have these stakeholder engagement skills where I bring people together and inspire them along a vision. So I think sometimes you can also inspire your future potential employers with those kinds of skills as well, that they don't know that they're lacking perhaps. But yes, it's not straightforward, I would say, but I think now there's lots more jobs in stakeholder engagement or just more on the social sciences in general. So yeah.
Yeah, but I think what you said kind of about geography seems really important, that you can't just say, you know, I'm Lisa, I'm a social scientist in the climate sector working here, I will get a job where I live.
Yeah.
You kind of had to survey, get a pulse on, you know, what was available. And it seemed like just through networking, through reaching out to different people, you realized that there was this trend in Europe that was different than other places.
Yeah.
And that's provided you more opportunities. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, definitely. I think I also had a bit of a, like, so I worked at IWA and then I left, and then I found a new job that was actually back home in Canada in Ottawa, but in a different city. And it was social sciences in the climate sector. And so I actually moved back for like 5 months. But then I realized, and I thought, oh, maybe this is me like moving back home with all my newfound skills. I'm going to work in social sciences in the water sector, climate sector in Canada. And then, yeah, it was a 5-month stint, and I'm back in Europe now because it still wasn't the same. Like I tried it, the sector in Canada definitely is still way far behind and way less dynamic than it was in Europe. So that's why I came back ultimately, is because I felt like I was missing all this kind of dynamism and network and people that had similar mindsets as me. So I wouldn't say you always have to move for your job, but it definitely helped me to find something that I love and make a new life somewhere else. And that's not necessarily for everybody or open for everybody, but it definitely helps if you kind of have that freedom to move around and chase your career. Yeah, it's definitely can open a lot of doors.
That's great. So I guess, Amir, going to you. So advice on the job market. So you kind of rose through the ranks at SWAN, and now you serve as the executive director. So, you know, for people maybe that currently have a job, how do you decide whether or not to look for a new job somewhere else, a different organization, kind of level up that way versus sticking with the same organization, kind of like you have with SWAN?
Yeah, thanks, Billy. So what attracted me to SWAN and why I'm still here almost 10 years later is the startup mentality. So no day is the same, and SWAN is always evolving. We're not doing the same thing we did 5 years ago. So when SWAN started, it was very vendor heavy. It was more like a club, I would say. But now we've really expanded. Nearly half of our members are utilities, and we used to just focus on drinking water, but now wastewater has become really prevalent. And one thing I really value in SWAN is the mobility. So like you said, I was an intern and now I'm the director. Before I was like a research director. and being able to engage with our passionate members, learn from my colleagues. I think that's what you have to really look for in a job. You have to enjoy the setting you're at and see room for growth.
Yeah, I feel like that's so important to think about your growth trajectory, which probably most people are just, okay, how do I get my first job? But I think that's a huge thing to consider that maybe, people that are new to the job market aren't really thinking about. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely agree. You have to see yourself there long term, and you have to have people there that you enjoy being around. So I think, yeah, that's the combination.
Great. So since Aaron isn't here, I kind of wanted to bring his experience into the conversation. So again, I think kind of in contrast with Amir and Lisa, Aaron really is focused on kind of the data analysis side, programming, coding, and where that meets civil engineering. And so I think it's a really important part of Smart Water. And I think one thing that's interesting that Aaron has done is he's created a personal website for his job search. And this personal website really is demonstrating his portfolio. It's a way to say, hey, here's all the things that I've done. You can see my ability to communicate here. You can see actual data that's come out of different things. And so can everyone see the kind of a white screen here?
Yeah.
Perfect. So this is Aaron's website. So tagline, data science consulting for the water industry, practical solutions for everything water. So here, what he's given you is a brief snapshot of his portfolio. So different services that he provides, talking about simplifying jargon. So trying to talk about smart water in a common sense way. So really outlining kind of his values and articulating those sorts of things to a broader audience during his job search. And then he actually gets into his portfolio. So different projects that he's worked on in his past jobs. So source water protection. You can see, plots that he's generated based on these different projects, climate change, adaptation, looking at water quality and regulatory violations, asset management. So here, what you can get a sense of, as someone who might be looking at this very interactive, expansive resume that he's got, this portfolio, is really the breadth of what he can do and his ability to synthesize information, kind of bring all of that together. And so I think this is really for people that want to get into the data programming side of Smart Water. This is definitely a growing trend of having personal websites. And because I would also put myself in this box, I have a personal website, that was especially up to date when I was looking for a job. But also, I also publish open source programming on GitHub. GitHub is a place that code and data is stored and shared publicly or privately. And so, I have this page where people can go and they can see code examples of things that I've created. So you can go in and see the R code that I wrote for this paper. And so this gives kind of a nice deep dive on something in particular. And so that's a perspective that I wanted to share because I think it's a growing trend with people that have programming skills that you really can showcase kind of what you're doing. So kind of, again, going back to actionable advice for the job market. So Amir and Lisa, is there any actionable advice that you have for job searchers, especially, websites, networking opportunities, organizations that you'd recommend, things that people can really dive into?
Yeah, I mean, Lisa, you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have really 3 pieces of advice. The first is, no matter where you are or what you're doing, strive to be the best, because you'll always be able to gain some transferable skills. So before I went to college, I worked at FedEx Kinko's. I a copy boy. And I was on the floor helping people, but it was really building my customer service skills in terms of being able to answer questions. So it had nothing to do with the water sector, but these are skills that you can learn later on. In terms of networking, there's really two main rules that I follow. One is that people like talking about themselves. So just like Lisa and I are doing on this webinar, you can talk to someone and just ask them questions about themselves. And second, people inherently like helping people. So Lisa mentioned this before, but you can set up what's called an informational interview. So you're not asking for a job, you're just trying to get to know what someone is doing. And at the end, after they've been talking about themselves, they'll think like, oh, Lisa or Amir, like, how can I help you? And even if they don't have a job, they'll keep you in mind for future opportunities, or maybe they'll have an idea of somewhere they can help you. And I think most jobs are actually not publicized. I think they're created, like Lisa's experience. And the last, probably most important, is always follow through. And I can tell you, like, so many times people have asked me for help and I've been willing to offer it, and then just silence. So always follow through. If you do an interview, send a thank you letter, but just always remember that.
Yeah, that's funny. Amir, I feel like we prepared together because I have very similar responses, or like similar and a few different ones. Okay, so my tips for networking are, and what I have loved and found really helpful for me, but I know this isn't for everyone, but being on social media. So, and social media more in the professional sense, but I mean also the new ways to use TikTok and all these other things that I feel too old to be on now. But LinkedIn and Twitter for me have been like the best way for me to build my network and to meet new people. And I use them every day. I don't often post on them as much as I used to when I was kind of building my social network, let's say, with my career and things like that. But they're really, really great places if you know how to use them well and you like using them. They're really great ways to meet people or post or keep people updated about what you're doing and sharing research or updates from your side. Kind of like, I know Aaron shares on LinkedIn, he shares a lot of posts about data science that are really interesting to follow, and they end up sparking like tons of conversations. So these are really nice tools. And I think one thing just to note about these two tools is a lot of my colleagues in the research field kind of feel like, oh, I'm not going to post anything because I don't know what to post and it's not perfect and it's not exact. And that's kind of like the researcher mindset. But I think you can just kind of YOLO and like go with the flow, write what you want and write what you think is interesting and use emojis and whatever. And people will see it and will like it. And I think that's how I've met a lot of friends in the water sector, friends, colleagues, and new people on Twitter as well. So they're really great spaces and you can follow different people that you want to connect with, which is fantastic. And then what I would say that's echoing what Amir said is that if you are going to contact people through LinkedIn, for example, I mean, I get a lot of messages often that are like, hey, here's my this, and I want you to do this for me, and I want you to do that. And those are messages that I will never really answer. I mean, I always answer people because I'm that kind of person. I would say, oh, thanks, but like, I don't know. But I think the first thing you need to remember is that like, we're all people and we're not just services. So if somebody just messages me out of the blue and sends me like their webpage without even asking like, hey, how are you? Or getting to know me first, I kind of feel like they're just trying to sell me a product, which maybe sometimes works. I don't know. But in my opinion, I feel like the human side of things is really important. And that's what I would always do as well. Like on LinkedIn, when I was still quite early on in my career, I would message people. And obviously, like I wanted to get to know them for a certain purpose, but I also just wanted to get to know them as a person too. And so I would always message them first and ask them like, say, hey, I read this paper by you, or I saw your blog. I thought it was really interesting. Could we set up a chat to talk about it? I would love to know more about your career, and just keep it short and simple. And I think that's really important. And the follow through is also really nice. But yeah, I think kindness and helping people is also really kind of important, and the reciprocity of kind of building your network, whether it's online or in person. And then just like one other thing that I've always loved, and it's always been fantastic for me to meet new people and to kind of get to know people who I reached out to and I'm now working with as colleagues, is going to conferences and events or coming to online webinars like this. It's really, really great to meet people. If you can go to any like IWA or SWAN conferences or anything like that, they're really, really great. Or even like your local water sector events. I know in North America, there's, or at least in Canada, there's a lot of like hubs for blue drinks, as they call them. So just very informal networking events. Those are like really great places where, again, you can just get to know people on a person-to-person level. And one tip there is that if you're like, I hate networking, I really never know what to do, I don't know what to say, I feel a lot of pressure, I get really nervous, that's totally fine, completely normal. It does get easier. But one thing that you can do in person too at these networking events is also just realize that like you're going to go have a beer or a coffee with someone. You don't have to prepare this whole spiel or elevator pitch and go up to like your water dream person and try to present yourself and your whole career and everything you've achieved. Just like, you know, say, hey, like, who are you? What do you do? Or something like that, you know, start the conversation off like as a fellow human. And that's often been the kind of relationships that I've built that have led me to like future opportunities. So yeah, just there's so many things out there and so many ways to connect with people. But I think relationship building is one of those special techniques that we don't often think about. We just want to kind of like sell ourselves or sell our skills. But getting to know people has definitely, for me at least, and what I try to reciprocate for others, has been kind of the my guiding tip throughout life and my career.
Yeah, I think, Lisa, that really resonates with me. You know, I think when you're looking for a job, it's easy to be very laser focused, you know, trying to reach out. Here's my resume, please get me a job. But it's kind of a long game, you know, building that network and yeah, reaching out to people. So I think before I transition to Q&A, we've got a ton of questions kind of that people sent in. I just want to briefly show people the resources that I shared. So I think if you're looking for a job, a great first place to look is, you know, just figuring out who are SWAN members. So for instance, you know, all of these companies are in smart water. They're utilities, they are technology vendors, they are consultants, they are startups. And so really this is a great kind of index of companies to look at for a job. So for instance, I saw Blue Conduit just posted a job, you know, today for a data scientist, and I think other jobs as well. And so this to me is like the first place I send anyone that's looking for a job in this sector, because, you know, this is a great kind of short list to start from, a short list that's getting a lot longer. And then we have the RiSWP webpage, which, you know, kind of has everything about, you know, the Rising Smart Water Professionals program within SWAN. And in particular, I imagine a lot of people are going to want to visit this career portal after this webinar. You know, it's got links on finding and applying to smart water jobs, courses and upskilling, LinkedIn groups for networking, and additional resources. So I think, you know, this is a great spot to look. You can also revisit the How to Land a Job in Smart Water that we did a couple years back as well. So I just wanted to give those things a shout out briefly, and then transition into Q&A. So I guess maybe just to start with some of the questions that we already had. I think one question that we had was, you know, what are the trends in smart water? What are the jobs that people see kind of that keep coming up? And what are the skills that people would need to have to be competitive for those jobs? I think, Amir, I think this might be a good one for you. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so you showed those companies, and those really are wide range, such as utilities, research firms, engineering. I think definitely data science, it comes up again and again. A lot of these companies, that's what they're looking for. And I think if you have like the softer skills, like kind of like Lisa and I think a huge value is being able to be a good researcher and to take complex matters and simplify them. Because a lot of these companies are selling their products to water utilities who also want the message simplified. So if you have the ability to do that, I think it's a great way to land a job. I think there's definitely an interest in AI now. And for a long time, smart water was kind of on the back burner. But with COVID, with people retiring from utilities, it's now really at the forefront. And so I think there's going to be more and more jobs. Like Billy said, a lot of our members are posting jobs daily. So to really stay up to date there. And I think it really depends on what your skills are and how you can kind of hone those into what people are looking for.
Yeah, that's great. And I know we also had a ton of questions. I think because you mentioned data science, so there's so many people that wonder, okay, how do I start? What programming language should I use? And we're going to really focus on those questions in upcoming mentorship series episodes. So we can't really get into too much detail here because we're trying to talk about getting a job generally, but keep an eye out for future episodes. Sign up for the newsletter that Sandy posted. When you get those newsletters, you're just going to get an email anytime we have one of these series. And so we will do a deeper dive into upskilling, how to learn those languages and how to make the decision between languages. Okay, so moving on to the next question. I think this is a tough one, but Lisa, here, I'm going to pose it to you. So this one's about transitioning from academics to industry. And it's this hard question. How do you get your first job out of school? How do you get engaged in the private water sector after being in academia? And especially, I would say, for people that don't have graduate degrees, what's your advice for them?
Yeah, it's really challenging. Like if you just, it depends how you define graduate degrees. Like, do you mean to a master's or?
I think a lot of people are trying to get jobs, straight from an undergraduate degree.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people in smart water do have a master's, but that might be changing. I don't know.
Yeah, in my experience, what I know is that a lot of my engineering friends have gone and done their undergraduates and then get a job right away in like some nice consultancy with a well-paid salary, and they're working in civil engineering or mechanical engineering, and they have it quite easy, I find. But for people in the social science sphere, it can be a bit more challenging because I think you are expected to have a bit more experience to back you up with a master's, perhaps with a bit more of in-depth knowledge and experience. But then indeed, it can get quite hard. But I think now most companies are definitely seeking people with at least a master's. I know at KWR, for example, we definitely have a lot of interns who are bachelor students, and then they go on to do their master's afterwards. But we are also like a research institute, so we're kind of linked up with academia in a way. But what's nice about KWR is that we're kind of half academia, half practice. So the drinking water utilities of the Netherlands are shareholders. So all of the research that we do is kind of the R&D for the water sector in the Netherlands. So it's a really cool kind of science to practice balance, which is super nice if you're interested in that. But yeah, in terms of academia, I think it just depends. Like, you can get really lucky, or it can be a real challenge. And I think it's kind of the same for everybody. I wouldn't say that in academia, maybe if you've gone on and done a PhD, it can then be really challenging because you've had like maybe 10 years of academic experience, and then you want to work in a consultancy. Maybe they feel like you're overqualified. But I think it comes back to kind of what we were saying before. Like, if you can network and alter your CV and your cover letters to show those skills that they're looking for in those specific companies or areas, then you could, surely find something. But in my experience, I've gone backwards. Like, I was in the industry and now I'm starting my PhD. So I don't really have too much additional insights on that, but I
think one thing is, you really have to seize whatever opportunity you can get, even if it's an internship, and just show your value, because you're not going to always you probably won't get your dream job right away.
No.
But if you have some opportunity just to really make the best out of it and prove your worth, then you'll be able to grow from there.
Yeah.
So just to have that kind of mindset, I think helps.
Yeah. And then I think we've got, a little less than 15 minutes. I want to ask one more question and then open it up for Q&A, for people to turn their microphones on and start asking questions. So the last question, I think it's a thorny one. Amir, we talked about this briefly, is, if you're trying to get a job in another country, what are some of the problems and how do you navigate that? I think the things that come up for a lot of people are visas. There's also language barriers, communication barriers, different things like that. Lisa and Amir, do you have any advice for people trying to navigate something like that?
Yeah, I think you nailed like the top two. I think like language and visa issues. And I think a lot of it has to do with culture. So finding a job like in Israel is very different than finding a job in the US. Actually, I don't think they care so much if you did a master's or a bachelor's. They want to really get to know you. So I think you really have to be able to build your network. And that will help you understand like your surrounding environment better.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, it was also like, I've moved I've worked very internationally. And for me, the first international experience I had was as an internship. So then I just needed a kind of, I could have gotten an intern or study abroad visa, but at the time when I wrote this in the chat, I actually had my British passport. So then I was able to move to Europe quite easily. Back then, not anymore because of Brexit, but anyways, yeah, I think things you need to take into account are like, because when I moved to the Netherlands, it was kind of like on a whim. I was like, oh, I'm 23 or 24. I'm just gonna jet set off and be there for 6 months and see what happens. Always kind of hoping that it would turn into something more. But I didn't really I didn't really know much about the Netherlands. I didn't know anything. I just knew I was going to work for an English company in the Netherlands. And it ended up being like a fantastic experience. I made great friends. Like I had the best experience I could have had. But if I would give advice to people now, especially when I went back to Canada and then came back to the Netherlands again, would be to really, like, when you're considering moving for a job, take a moment to sit down and reflect and think about like where you want to live, what kind of culture you want to live in, what you want to do with your life, not only your career. And if you have kids or a family or a significant other, that can also lead to like different things that you need to think about too. And I think if you're a single, young, like recent graduate, it's super easy to just move anywhere. And, you can get by with language and you can be living like the expat life. But I think when I moved back to Canada, I didn't think about all of those things. I was like, oh, I'm just going to move back there and it'll be like when I move to the Netherlands, it'll be the same. So yeah, you definitely have to think about your life and like your setting and what you want to have too, because for me, it wasn't what I wanted at all in the end. And I mean, I'm happy that I tried it because I don't think that I would have regretted it if I hadn't, but I think I would have probably told myself like, okay, you should reflect a bit more before you go. And then of course, also all the practical things like getting a visa or whatever living means you require and stuff like that.
That's great. Well, thanks so much, Lisa. So just to open it up in the last 10 minutes, where we can have some open Q&A, feel free to turn your mics on. One thing I'll say is keep the questions short. One question per person. We'll probably only be able to get through a few questions. Robert, it looked like you turned your microphone on. Do you want to start?
Sure, yeah. Hey, Billy. I want to say I recently just accepted a job at a new company here in Denver, and it's with CDM Smith, and they are, have Trinex, which is a part of the Smart Water Network. And I was curious of your and everyone on the panel's kind of suggestions on how to really, because I'm getting, some early entry data science stuff and things, and how to just advocate for yourself to be more into that role besides, doing good work and that kind of thing, but just what the best way is to go, advocate for yourself in a new role and say, hey, I really want to be a part of this. How can I really grow that into my job?
That's a very good question.
The question is for Billy, actually.
Yeah, Billy,
Well,
do you want to say something?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yeah, I think really at the heart of it, it's about setting expectations, especially I think even from when you're accepting the job, I think when I was applying to the consulting firm that I work at, I wasn't expecting to go into consulting. I wanted to do a lot in data and software. And I brought that up a lot. And I saw that they heard me. The people that were recruiting me, they heard me, they understood what drove me. And they aligned me with mentors, with kind of champions within the firm that got who I was and what I brought uniquely to the table. And by having kind of the right mentors and bosses that could advocate for me, that could say, hey, I know you want Billy to work on this asset management project right now. Like, he really needs to be working on this type of thing. That was hugely instrumental to steer me in the right direction, so I didn't get sort of distracted from the things that I honestly wasn't very good at and didn't bring unique value to. So yeah, I think it's finding mentors, people that can advocate for you, that can help make job decisions for you, that can pull you in different directions on projects.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would add to that if you don't because in some companies you have really great supervisors and mentors who will hear you and see you and put you in those opportunities, but it's not always the same in all companies. And I think when you start at a new job, it can often feel very daunting to kind of navigate and put your voice out there and also ask for things. And I think one thing that I've learned over the years is that if I feel like what I'm doing isn't aligned with what I want to do or what my skills are, or kind of like showing what my potential is, I ask for it, and I will set up discussions with my boss or with people in my company that I think are doing what I like to do or connected with those things, and try to network with them so they know what my skills are, they know what I want to do, so that if they have an upcoming project, they might say, oh yeah, Lisa has this experience, let's talk to her. And obviously over time it gets better, but I think if it doesn't happen directly from above, like just definitely set up a meeting with your bosses and say, hey, like, I just wanted to talk about XYZ, and be your own best advocate as well.
Yeah, communicating and networking within the firm. And yeah, no, I think that definitely reflects my experience. So yeah, I think to get to some other questions, does someone else want to turn their mic on and ask a question?
Yeah, there was a good question to Billy, the best advice a mentor has given you.
Yeah,
that was one of the pre-questions. I'll let Lisa think about that. But I mean, I've heard a lot of great advice, but one that I particularly remember was I was working at Takadu, and there was someone that I was really close with, and he was leaving Takadu, and he pulled me aside, and I was probably like 6 months at Takadu, was also working for SWAN, and he just said, I'm leaving, but Amir, you're gonna be a star. And it just inspired this confidence in me. And I think it's important for people to hear that sometimes, that you're on the right path, and that you can be more confident in yourself.
I see Jayashri has their hand raised.
Yes, I would like to ask a question. It's like, can you just brief me about SWAN's presence in Europe? Because when I navigate through the website, all I see is about the opportunities and the improvements that is happening in the USA and Canada. I would like to know about SWAN's presence in Europe.
Yes, so SWAN has a really large presence in Europe. Actually, our annual conference is going to be in Glasgow. I really recommend, if you're looking for a job, there's nothing better than meeting people in person, and there's a young professional discount to attend. I know a lot of former even SWAN employees that got jobs at the SWAN conference. So I recommend networking there. And there's lots of big European events. There's one called Aquatech in Amsterdam that's going to be happening in November. But I think also Lisa works for a European company.
Yeah, so I just wrote in the chat that KWR is a SWAN member as well, and we're based in Europe. So yeah, I think Amir, SWAN originated kind of more in the US, so that's why the US presence seems a bit stronger on the website, but there's definitely tons of members in Europe. And as Amir said, the SWAN conference I've never been to. I've only been online, which was really fun when it was online. But the Aquatech is also an amazing conference in Europe, in Amsterdam. It's great, and you can go for free to the kind of exhibition hall, and you can meet SWAN people there, or other members that are there. So definitely, if you want to reach out to me, if you're based in Europe, please just send me a LinkedIn message after, or we can chat.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Chan.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I think that's about all the time that we have for questions. I think I just wanted to leave everyone with, I guess, this last resource. I know we talked briefly at the beginning about the RiSWP Ambassador Program. So the application there is due January 28th, so coming up soon. So you can get there from SWAN's RiSWP page, which I just put in the chat. And if you're interested in more mentorship series events, more RiSWP events, please do subscribe to the newsletter. That way you'll just get it straight to your email. And with that, I just want to thank everyone for coming. Amir, Lisa, thank you for making the time. Sandy for organizing. And yeah, Amir and Lisa, is there anything you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I would say just like it's now is a tough time to find a job. Like I've heard from a lot of people, and you have to stay positive and always, like, finding a job is a job, and really just build your network. Always build your network. You'll never know when an opportunity is going to show up, and when you do find something, even if it's not what you're expecting to do in the long term, really try to make the most out of it.
Yeah. And I think on that note too, yeah, be kind to yourself, because it is really rough out there and it can be really challenging and feel like it's taking forever. And you might have interviews and never get an offer. And you might think like, oh, nobody likes me, or I'm doing terribly. But you can always email people after an interview and ask for feedback. And more often than not, they'll tell you you're doing a great job. They just had somebody else. So just, yeah, be kind to yourself, ask for feedback. And yeah, I'm sure all of you smart water people here will get a great job if you don't already have one soon.
Perfect. I love it. You know, a practical, but also hopeful note to end on. Thank you everyone for being here, to all the RiSWP ambassadors that I see, and everyone else that's part of SWAN, and the new faces as well. So we'll see you next time at the next episode of the mentorship series. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.